Good morning, everybody. We have a great show coming up for you today on GoJo and Golic. Some awesome guests coming your way. Hall of Fame guests. We got Dwight Freeney and Brian Urlacher going to be joining us. That is going to be awesome. Plus, Mark Few, Team USA assistant coach, joining us ahead of the USA men's game against Serbia. And do we have some contender concerns? Okay, which Super Bowl hopefuls we're a little bit concerned about? All that and more coming up on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here with you guys. We got a great show, as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. I'm pumped to talk to Mark Few. Head out to Paris as they're getting ready. Steve Kerr thinks that Serbia might have been playing possum this whole time, that Nikola Jokic has been leading this effort to subvert the American attention span as they head in and further into the knockout stage. So we will head out to Paris and we will give you plenty more Olympic updates there. Very excited about that. But, Dad, we've had a few stories that have kind of lingered throughout the week so far. Obviously, the Brandon Ayuk will they, won't they in San Francisco is still waiting for resolution as the Pittsburgh Steelers reinserted themselves yesterday. That conversation appears to be ongoing, and a war of insiders is taking place on my timeline, which we can get to later. But we did get a little bit of definitive news yesterday in the world of college athletics. Jim Harbaugh had his punishment handed down by the NCAA, but not for the sign-stealing scandal yet. If you remember, last time on Dragon Ball Z, Jim Harbaugh also got popped before that for a recruiting violation that involved him buying a cheeseburger at a recruiting meeting with prospects he wasn't supposed to be talking to during COVID-19. I boil it down to that because this got called the cheeseburger violation for a lot of people because it was Jim Harbaugh meeting with recruits during a COVID-19 dead period at a time that was impermissible, and then failing to disclose it to the NCAA when they came to talk about him, basically giving them false information, in their minds misleading him. And so now, Dad, Jim Harbaugh hit with a 4-year show cause order as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers now. So in seeing this, I think the NCAA has made it pretty clear their goals are to disincentivize people lying to them. They want you to cooperate, and they are going to use what little power we deem they have left to punish here as strongly as they can. So what did you make of this punishment for Jim Harbaugh as he sits now in Los Angeles getting ready for this season? A 4-year show cause penalty for him if he were to ever go back to college sports.
Yeah, and this is a level 2 violation, not even a level 1 violation. And the reason it's called the cheeseburger gate or whatever is because the way the NCAA got the information was the recruit remembered Jim Harbaugh ordering a cheeseburger for breakfast and thought that was kind of strange. So he remembered that. And there was also a person on
Jim
staff
Harbaugh being a weird guy got him popped in this, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And there was a staff member who recalled it as well. And basically Jim was like, I don't know anything. I don't remember anything. So a couple of things. A level 2 violation in a 4-year show cause seems a bit much. And I wonder
Dad, I will say, it's a level 2 violation for the underlying actions, but the NCAA gave him a level 1 infraction for providing false or misleading information. So that's where they jumped it up, and that's why we're dealing with this serious of a punishment.
Yeah, level 1 aggravated, I think, as they put it. I wonder if they would have given this same punishment if he was still coaching in college, or because he's gone to the NFL, if this would have been the same punishment or not if he stayed in college. That obviously we'll never know. The NCAA will say, yes, we would have, but who knows if they would have or not. But this is basically...
Is this like akin to in Major League Baseball when they suspend a pitcher who you know is going to be resting for 4 days in between starts or 5 days in between starts, and you suspend him X number of days knowing it's not actually going to affect him all that much?
Or it'll affect one start. It'll be like a 5-game suspension, and it'll affect one start. Whereas an everyday player would affect 5 games. So, I mean, this is, again, a case of of misrepresenting or lying or whatever you want to call it, of Jim not cooperating with the NCAA and them coming down hard on him, Jesse.
So I have a question for you guys. If then we're going to get the sign stealing punishment at some point, right? Are they going to run on top of each other, or is it going to be like you serve this sentence and then you serve the next sentence?
It's a great question, and one I don't really know the answer to. Yeah, concurrent life sentences that we're really starting to get deep into the legalese here. The short answer for me is I don't really know. This feels rather unprecedented in the way that it's being laid out. I wouldn't be surprised if it was stacked on top, just because the NCAA does treat the idea of being a repeat offender as something of note. It's what is probably in line, Dad, to affect Sherrone Moore, the active Michigan head coach, the most, because he also, remember, had a deal with a level 2 violation when it came to recruiting that was already talked about here. When we had Dan Murphy on the other day, he said that's one of the things being considered is Sherrone Moore is now technically a repeat offender because of a recruiting violation. And so that absolutely can add up in the NCAA's mind of the way they view this. And Dad, before we get back to you, I just wanted, for anyone that's unfamiliar with what a show cause penalty is, and that might not live in the world of college football legalese as much, a show cause penalty essentially means if any school wants to hire that coach during the period where it's is happening. And for Jim Harbaugh, it started the other day and it runs through August 6th of 2028. So if a team wants to hire Jim Harbaugh in college, they've got to go before the NCAA Committee on Infraction and explain why they want to do so. They would then have to suspend him for the first full year of his term with that school, and then every year after that, he would still be barred from all athletic-related activities, including team travel, practice, video study, recruiting, team meetings at any NCAA school that employed him after the fact. So it is a massive disincentivization. It does a great job of disincentivizing a school from wanting to hire a coach that has these challenges that will be presented.
Yeah, but the coach is coaching in the NFL. So if he coaches for 4 years in the NFL and then goes back to college, everything is done. He can go and he can coach. So that's what I mean. So I don't know if they would have done this if he was still in college, because this will have zero effect on him, because I would imagine he would coach 4 years in the NFL. Maybe not. We've seen certainly coaches coach for less years, coach for a year or so. But after 4 years, as Mike said, that's a 4-year show cause, he can go back, no penalty at all. Now, that is unless there's more added on with the sign stealing, which we don't know, which Jim has said, publicly just a few days ago. He does not apologize for it. He was not complicit, didn't know anything about it. Sherrone Moore is in some trouble, level 2 trouble for that, because he deleted 52 text messages to Connor Stallions, though they were recovered, and then he gave them to the NCAA, who was like, I'm going to hide these. Oh, wait, they retrieved them? Okay, here you go. And I love how the NCAA said, well, it's a level 2 now because he cooperated. Well, did he cooperate at first when he hid the messages from you? He just got nailed and they got retrieved, and then he had to give them to the NCAA. So, but I guess that kind of further serves the point where they're just trying to show you, hey, we can be cool if you just come and cooperate with us at all. Because again, I've railed against this for years as someone whose university was personally snake bitten by this idea that, Notre Dame, when they were going through an academic violation on campus with the football team that did cooperate with the NCAA, still wound up with all of the wins from my season and a subsequent season being vacated by the NCAA because of that. Which is crazy. Was one of the mounting pieces of pile of evidence that said, hey, cooperating with them really doesn't benefit you all that much. And so if you are the NCAA at this point, you're simultaneously at a time where you are weaker than ever, where your word means less than ever. And as Tom Mars, the attorney for Jim Harbaugh, said in a statement that he put out. Tom Mars, by the way, who has been a lawyer around college athletics for years, was a waiver lawyer for a long time, then actually worked on the NCAA side a bit with some of their enforcement cause, said, if I were Coach Harbaugh's shoes and had $80 million contract and was the head coach of the Chargers, I wouldn't pay any attention to the findings of a kangaroo court which claims to represent the principles of the nation's most flagrant repeat violator of federal antitrust laws. So that's what they think of you right now if you're the NCAA. So you're trying to balance, how much do I go out and punish? By the way, shout out to Tom Mars for using Chargers colors in the statement font that he put out on Twitter. But if you're the NCAA, you're trying to balance
going out and punishing as much as you can right now at a time where you have not been able to get away with much in the way of punishments before higher courts slap you around and tell you your word doesn't mean a damn thing, and also trying to incentivize cooperation still by knocking it down to a level 2 violation just because Sharon Moore, when he got caught, finally dumped the text out in front of you and said, all right, I'll play nice.
Yeah, and I think overall, Michigan people don't care about the Harbaugh aspect of this, right? Because Harbaugh is gone.
Yeah.
Harbaugh does not affect their school anymore. So he gets a 4-year show cause, which if he coaches 4 years in the NFL means absolutely nothing. He goes back to college if he wants, and he coaches scot-free. So no issues there. The NCAA, they already had put Michigan on 3 years probation along with a fine and recruiting limits after reaching a negotiated resolution in this case of the case of recruiting, not the sign stealing. So now we go to the sign stealing and we see where that's going to lead. So Michigan fans are concerned about Michigan right now, about, the effect of the fine. They don't care about Michigan fans, and Michigan can afford the fine, but it's recruiting limits. If there's limits on scholarships or wherever it's going to go, how Michigan fans, rightly so, are going to be, how does this affect the current team? That's it.
And I think the answer to that is apparent based on what we saw and talked to with Dan Murphy the other day, who again was part of the ESPN reporting around the initial draft of the notice of allegations for the sign stealing portion, which could still take months to fully legislate on the NCAA side. What it sounded like is, again, Sharon Moore and the folks that are still on campus are facing much more in the way of level 2 violation status, which is below what even happened here with Jim Harbaugh. It's Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, Denard Robinson, and a bunch of the coaches that are no longer at the university that seem to be in range of the steepest penalties. So I still, Dad, when we were coming off our conversation with Dan Murphy, my thought was, this might actually not be as bad in terms of the penalties as we have seen here for Jim Harbaugh. And this sort of further underscores that based on the fact that, like you said, ultimately for the guy left on campus, what's being levied against him, at least what we know so far, and there could still be more in the months to come, does not seem like it will be punished as severely because there was cooperation to an extent.
And to an extent, and one of those not cooperating was Connor Stalions himself, which you wonder if the NCAA will be watching with others the Netflix documentary on the sign stealing, of which they'll find nothing because those will give you no information. And Connor Stalions doesn't have, it's not like the NCAA can subpoena you and make you talk. If you don't want to talk, you don't have to talk. And Connor Stalions has not cooperated with the NCAA at all. And maybe it's just so all the information can come out in this docuseries, which isn't going to happen because we haven't had one yet where anything of substance has come out. So, yeah, I agree. I don't know where this is going to go with more proof that they have with Connor Stalions. I don't know what's going to come out in this docuseries. I don't know. He's not cooperating with the NCAA. So I agree. I don't think there's going to be a very adverse punishment here.
Boy, Connor Stalions got two wolves inside of him going into this documentary. On one side, you've got the man so loyal to Michigan, he was willing to go down for the ship in the midst of this scandal very publicly while he's found out on Central Michigan sideline wearing a disguise and all this goofy stuff. And on the other side is a man with a manifesto of what basically shines a window into the soul of how he believes he can be the one to lead Michigan to glory, who's now handed a microphone in a very public platform to go out and spout whatever propaganda he wants to. I am somewhat excited to see what Wolf wins. You're going to have to win me with the clips on the internet before I give my time to any more of those Netflix docuseries, though. Fool me one time, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. So we will wait and put a bow on that. As again, Jim Harbaugh receives a four-year show cause penalty for level 2 recruiting violations that turned into level 1 violations because he was not honest with the NCAA. We are still months away from whatever will happen with the sign stealing scandal. Jesse, let's move on to more pressing matters that are a follow-up from yesterday. In the NFL, Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni were the subject of some reporting over by ESPN about the nature of their relationship, and I understand Jalen Hurts had to get up and answer for that yesterday.
Yeah, so Hurts was asked about the report yesterday, and he had an exchange with McManus, who's one of the guys who authored the report.
Who wrote it?
I wrote it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why is that relevant now?
Why is it relevant?
Yeah.
Trying to give proper context from what happened last season so we have a better understanding of where we are now.
Okay. sometimes the understanding, I think sometimes people are only able to know what they understand. Sometimes people don't know what they don't know. But in that regard, I think, where we are is you have reports and you have rumors and then you have reality. And, we're in reality right now.
You hear that, Tim McManus? We're living in reality.
Yeah.
Also, guys, I did not realize this, but the report dropped yesterday, which was Jalen Hurts' 26th birthday. That's just kind of mean.
Oh, come on, man, on his birthday?
Yeah.
He's already in training
Wow.
camp. Life sucks bad enough, and now he's got to answer questions. And unfortunately for Jalen, did not answer them in a way that is going to throw cold water on any of this, Dad. What we just heard there really isn't going to go a long way. We'll get to, at some point, Josh Allen talking about Stephon Diggs, that I actually can understand what he was doing and why it sounded so awkward. But with Jalen Hurts, it just seems like he is fully incapable of lying about his feelings about Nick Sirianni.
Well, I mean, this is all stemming from the other interview that he gave, what was it, during OTAs or the off-season program about last year, and he couldn't give a good answer to Nick Sirianni and the possible butting of heads or how he's changed or, that moment of hesitation and answer raised a lot of eyebrows as to what was going on. So, Jalen, needed to answer that question better, I guess, to not bring along up the speculation, which, has at least to the article's extent been proven somewhat true. So, I mean, it's fair to ask, where the relationship is. Since that's what we're talking about, the relationship between coach and quarterback and how much Kellen Moore, the new offensive coordinator, can kind of buffer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, Tim McManus' defense of this was absolutely the correct one. We're trying to figure out if you guys are going to be capable of getting it together this year. Because when it involves the head coach and the quarterback that got $255 million, that working relationship, I don't care if you guys like each other, but do you respect each other enough to go to work? Right. The history of this sport is littered with plenty of quarterbacks and coaches that hated each other's guts, but got along well enough and respected each other well enough between the lines to go out there and make it work. And that was where this got blurry. And so when Jalen Hurts gets asked this question, and the answer is, why is this relevant right now? Not the easy, again, PR firms, if you ever want to hire me, I give you a bunch of easy answers, as I'm sure whoever's involved in Eagles PR can in these situations, which is Coach Sirianni and I have a great working relationship here. I respect what he's done here in Philadelphia and what our partnership has brought this team and myself, and I'm excited to go back to work with him in the 2024 season. That's the answer that stops all of this in its tracks right now. Why is this relevant? Says, to me, yeah, there's some truth to this, but I don't know why you're bringing up old stuff right now.
No, I agree. I agree. And it's going to remain there because it's all going to be based on wins and losses, which is, again, a head scratcher because they were 10-1 before they folded last year. And a lot is going to fall on Kellen Moore. And what I talked about yesterday with Nick Sirianni, with his job on the line, he's clearly going to be on the hot seat, changing coordinators 3 years in a row. Well, one time both got hired away as head coaches, so that wasn't on him. In when you're on the hot seat, you want to control things. So how difficult will it be to cede control to Kellen Moore to run the offense when you know your butt's on the line? So while it seems like that should be the way to go, or Kellen Moore at least in there, as a mediator between the two, if that in fact is the right word, Nick Sirianni giving up total control, I think is going to be tough when you know that your butt's on the line.
Yeah, it's... Everyone is firmly in it in Philadelphia right now. Later in the show, we're going to have a little reconciliation with the offseason and try and crown the NFL's most dysfunctional team that we've seen in the 2024 offseason because, boy, we have got some compelling contenders that seem to want to keep inserting themselves in this conversation. We can certainly get to plenty of that coming up here as the NFL has been NBA levels of dramatic this offseason. But coming up next, let's head out to Paris. Our men's basketball team continues to take care of business. They get ready to face Serbia today. And Mark Few, their assistant coach, is going to join us next and talk about his experience with USA basketball here on GoJo and Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield. Hoping to talk to Mark Few, the Olympic men's basketball assistant coach, and obviously head coach of the Gonzaga Bulldogs out in the West Coast Conference. Here in a second, having a little technical difficulties from Paris, which is not surprising because he's halfway across the world. So we will continue to effort that and hopefully talk to Coach Few here momentarily. But, Dad, in the meantime, we were talking about dysfunction in the NFL level and what we've seen from teams this offseason. We talked about Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles and some of their issues. But I'm curious for you, do they even crack the medal stand for dysfunction that we've seen this offseason so far with the 49ers' strange case of Brandon Ayuk, with the Dallas Cowboys not signing pretty much any of their star players in an all-important offseason for them, the Kansas City Chiefs? We can go on down the list. I'm curious for you, as you look at this offseason, have you been surprised by the number of NFL teams making head-scratching decisions?
Yeah, and I look at how it affects the team on the field, right? And you look at the 49ers, we keep talking about the amount of talent that they have if Ayuk isn't there, or if a receiver doesn't come back with Ayuk and it's left to Debo and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. We talk about the amount of talent they have, but you're also missing a left tackle in Trent Williams, who, while Ayuk is there and in, it is Trent Williams is not in camp and not there. So that makes it a little more difficult, I think, on the field. I would say them or the Dallas Cowboys, where, just like I said, San Francisco has more talent on offense. The talent on offense is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, as far as catching the ball, I mean, that's basically it. Dak Prescott, in all honesty, is in a fine position, right? You can either get the extension signed for $50 million plus a year, or you can have another great year and be a freaking free agent as a top level quarterback, which would be gold. So for them, it's really just CeeDee Lamb, and I had firmly believed that they're taking a step back with their running game as well. So I would, from a football standpoint, I would probably lean toward the Cowboys, because I think San Francisco can still be the top team in the NFC, though the Trent Williams one is sneaky getting there.
I think the 49ers win by sheer volume of this, and because them and Dallas both have this impending quarterback cliff. Now, the 49ers is different. It's more of a financial deal, and we've seen teams manage to overcome that before, but the 49ers have been such a case study in how the strength of a roster overall can elevate that team, whereas the Dallas Cowboys really are facing the prospect of, now they've let it, you're right, get too close to the zero barrier, for them to be able to get through this with their starting quarterback wanting to sign back with this team for any reason. There's no reason right now at this point for Dak Prescott.
Right.
If you ride this out, you are on the other. You're one step from the end of the rainbow, where riches, the likes of which we have never seen for a quarterback, are waiting for you. And Dak does seem like he is uniquely motivated as one of those guys that wants to advance the ball for other players around the NFL, that believes this can be a moment that really resets the idea of what a quarterback is worth overall. And we say all the time, that is a really difficult thing to do. Like, I want a full stop on that. People always say all the time, well, think about what this could mean for other players. When you're the guy in there and someone's handing you what we've seen for these quarterbacks, $250 million contracts with 150 plus million guaranteed, and you play the most violent sport known to man, and you're the one that's supposed to go out there with your security, your family, to think about all those things, it's really hard to turn that money away. It's why we don't see many of these top-level players actually reach free agency. And so actually having a guy that's motivated like that is a massive weapon that I'm sure this is an interesting spot for NFL owners too, because remember how pissed off they were about the Deshaun Watson contract, and remember how everyone put their hands up to sit out whatever was happening with Lamar Jackson, albeit more complicated on the franchise tag. And now you have Dak Prescott, this quarterback that is good enough for a lot of them to want, but so expensive that he's going to change the way they need them forever.
Yeah, I still look at on the field. I think it's between them and the 49ers, because on the field, what they've done, and it's not so much the drama of not getting a running game, but they don't have a running game. They didn't do anything to help their running game, and their most important offensive weapon outside of the quarterback won't be on the field. And he was by far and away the top receiver and top offensive threat for this team. So I still look at it because, again, I see San Francisco having the ability to overcome, even though theirs is more with two guys, Ayuk. And again, do they get somebody back if they eventually do trade Ayuk, or does Ayuk, end up playing for them? I still think they're in a position to be the top team in the NFC, where the Cowboys, I think, are going to take a step back. You have Kansas City with some of the off-field issues of Rashee Rice and Isaiah Buggs, Harrison Butker. I don't think that's going to affect on the field too much unless there are suspensions. And I don't mean for Buckner. I mean for Rashee Rice.
Rashee Rice.
In the situation. Rashee Rice. So I don't see much of an effect there. I'm looking at just total football effect.
Well, Dad, I think this underscores what's really at the heart of this, which is, and this is unfortunately the reductive truth of a lot of what we talk about, is if it doesn't involve the head coach and the quarterback, it feels comparatively less severe. It's why it does feel so severe in Dallas. And with them, too, it extends, like you said, CeeDee Lamb, who is of such singular importance to their offense. You could even lump in Micah Parsons, the fact that they haven't gotten out in front of that more for a defensive player that they know is going to cost them a bunch of money. For the 49ers, you mentioned the Trent Williams of it all. There are other players that have absolutely important roles in this, but like we talked about with Jalen Hurts, when it's the CEO of your franchise and the person he works most closely with in the head coach, then all of a sudden it feels most severe. So you're right in Kansas City, where it has been one after another with bad headlines for them off the field this offseason. For them to still have Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, they're all still doing their part in singing Kumbaya. You're like, all right, they've shown they can weather pretty much everything else on the field, so stuff off the field isn't going to be any issue for them. You look at a place like Buffalo, where another place where we got an interesting soundbite the other way. Do we have that Josh Allen sound where he got asked about missing Stephon Diggs yesterday? Because it's perfect.
Steph's a great player, and what he brought to this team was special. So miss is I don't know if I'd say miss. He was a guy that was reliable. You can look to. He's going to have the juice each and every day. I'm sure he's bringing it over there in Houston. So definitely, you can't say that you don't miss that. But I am very happy with what we got going on here and how hard the guys have been working. And
And, Dad, that last sentence kind of gave away the goods. He was trying to protect the guys on his roster with that one. He was trying to say, hey, listen, I still trust and believe in our guys in the room. And he was conflating, I think, what they were asking with, hey, do you miss his production on the field? And it came off sounding like he was slighting Stephon Diggs, the person, where I think the answer is really in the middle of, oh, no, he said a bunch of good things about Stephon Diggs while there was drama in that relationship. And for the Bills now, that drama is gone, but it also has a production void that needs to get filled. And that seemed to be Josh trying to be more deferential to the guys still on the roster in a way that just sounded clunky, which is why I feel like that's different than the Jalen Hurts sound that we got.
I agree. I think it's much ado about nothing. I don't think it was a shot at Diggs. I don't know why you would do that, though we've seen players do things like that in the past. But more a confidence builder for the receivers that he has. So I agree. It was done in kind of a clunky way that raised eyebrows. Oh, wait, you don't miss him, to the fact that, no, we're concentrated on the guys that are here filling the void. So I agree. I think that's much ado about nothing.
Yeah, so I think this is still an award for most dysfunctional franchise of the offseason. I think this is still an award that the Cowboys win going away.
Yeah.
The Eagles have had a late surge here with the Jalen Hurts and Sirianni stuff, and I don't think it's insignificant. Like, again, that exchange, Tim McManus, him being asked, why is this relevant? I think he answered it perfectly why it's relevant going into this season, and you've talked about some of those tentacles, but that's one part of a roster that did do a lot in the way of overhauling for their issues. The Dallas Cowboys, meanwhile, basically said, we're going to hold steady and not do anything in a way that complicates everything for that franchise. So congratulations, Dallas. You've already won something for the offseason. We'll see if you can get back to winning 12 games a year in the season and maybe a postseason game beyond that in what could be your final year with Dak Prescott. Or, oh, by the way, you'd have to pay him next season, too. Coming up next, though, we think we are actually going out to Paris. We believe we've got Mark Few for you, and we're going to find out all about Team USA next on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. Pumped to head over to Paris as we have been digesting tons of the Olympics going on over there, to be joined by U.S. men's basketball assistant coach and obviously Gonzaga men's basketball head coach Mark Few, kind enough to give us a few moments in the lead up to their game against Serbia at 3 o'clock Eastern over here. But Coach, I guess good afternoon already over there. How are you doing today?
Yeah, we're doing good. We had our film session, had our walkthrough, and now the guys are resting, getting ready for a big game tonight.
So as far as the big game, Serbia, this is the third time you've played them in a relatively short amount of time. So, you know, there's the talk of, was Serbia holding something back, which seems hard to believe. What goes into the thought process of scouting somebody for a third time in this short a period of time?
Yeah, that's a great call. It's I think at some point, you know, as coaches, we try to prepare for anything, but sometimes maybe you might create or imagine, you know, some scenarios that probably aren't going to happen. But I mean, we do know that, you know, they have one of the best players in the entire world, and certainly somebody that has all of our attention, and the big fella Jokic. And then also just like a lot of these FIBA teams, you know, Mike, they're very comfortable in their roles. They're very dialed into their roles. They've been doing it for several years, and you know that everybody knows on that roster what they're going to do and what they're supposed to do. And the last thing I'd say is, you know, in both games we've had just some really good shooting performances. You know, we had Steph go off first game, and then KD was spectacular in the second game. They were actually pretty tight games at half, and then we were able to kind of break those things open.
Yeah, Coach, this team has been able to put a lot of distance between itself and the competition on the court. So much of the commotion around this team has been with the rotations and managing all of these talented players on the court. So how difficult has that portion of things been for you and for Steve Kerr in managing the minutes for a team this full of superstars for the U.S.?
I mean, it is. It's definitely garnered a lot of, you know, the conversation in all our meetings, and heck, even at points during timeouts and stuff. I just think Steve's done just a masterful job. He's conscientious of it, and look, nobody's going to feel sorry for us having that problem. It's always a good thing to have too many great players, you know. But it is. You know, it is challenging at times to make sure you're giving the guys, you know, enough time to get some sort of rhythm out there. I think that's the hardest thing for our guys is, you know, when you're playing 5, 6, 7 minute spurts, these guys are used to playing, you know, an entire half, and you can kind of shoot yourself back into a something or get your rhythm in other areas. And so I think in these last couple games, we've kind of really dialed in exactly where we want to be with the rotations and everything. The guys have really responded. We played our best couple games these last two times out.
You dipped your toe into the national team coaching in 2015, head coach of the Pan Am Games and the U.S. national team to a bronze. How has that helped you now in being an assistant coach on this squad?
I mean, the first thing it does is, I mean, you become very familiar with FIBA, and I think that's probably hard for just the average fan to understand. This is a very, very different game from the NBA, and much more like the game, you know, that I coach on a regular basis. It's only 40 minutes long. It's really, really physical. You know, you can play help side defense, which means you can park a defender in the lane for as long as they want. There's no 3-second, you know, defensive call. And so you take the ball out on the baseline much more than you do in the NBA, and just all the little nuances like that. And there's some other aspects where you hit the ball off the rim, which you can't do in the NBA or college. So there's a lot of stuff you got to adapt to. So I think that's certainly been beneficial for me, but also something that for the most part I'm used to a lot of that stuff. The biggest adjustment for me is just this incredible array of talent that I get to watch on a daily basis, and probably the most I hate to use the term heartwarming or whatever, but just enlightening aspect for me is to just see how professional, like LeBron James, and how he approaches every practice and every film session. And Steph Curry with his meticulous approach to not only practice but then afterwards, his shooting routine after each and every time we practice. It's a game speed, game spots, game shots. It's what you lecture your players, all these years. But it's just been incredible to see that, and there's a reason why they're great, and obviously that's a big part of it.
Coach, I know we always joke, every coach is looking for those teachable moments to bring back to their players and their team as you get ready to head back to your players at Gonzaga. Have you found the moment or the anecdote or this little thing you've taken from being around all of these all-time greats that you've already got filed away, that you're like, the first team meeting, I'm going to hit him with this to drive home my point in a way that maybe I wouldn't have been able to before without this kind of ammo?
Great question, and to be honest with you, it's kind of what I alluded to. It happened in our first practice. I still remember it vividly, and it has not changed one iota since then. When LeBron James is involved in a practice, he is talking. He's talking on defense. He's calling out screens. He's explaining our coverages. Not only what he's doing, but if he's down on the baseline, he's helping the other guys out on top of the floor. When we're on offense, he's calling out, what we should be doing down there and the actions that we're doing. And I swear to you, in the last 7-8 years, for at least my players, I think it's pretty college-wide, it must be a generational thing. It is harder than heck to get them to talk. I think they think it is not cool. So I can't wait to share that one of the greatest players in the history of basketball is one of the greatest talkers, and I mean the right kind of talking too. Everything that goes on the floor.
Getting to do that, Coach, and coming back off what looks like it's well on its way to being a gold medal effort, I'd have to imagine will go a long way in making sure that if they didn't already want to listen to the winningest active coach in Division I by win percentage right now, that having LeBron James at your backing would certainly go a long way. So, Coach, we know you got a busy day coming up. We appreciate your time. Best of luck against Serbia today and the rest of the way through the tournament. We're all rooting you guys on.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Awesome. Again, Mark Few, Gonzaga men's basketball head coach and assistant here for Team USA, Dad. There's the Team USA and the gold they're going for, but that last answer was really something, talking about this generation of players, and he's coaching top teams, that they don't want to talk, that they don't think it's cool to communicate, and now he can go back and say this 20-year vet, who got into the league at 18 years old, talks on defense and on offense, that talking can be a big part of the game. He must be salivating at the fact that he can take that back to his players and say, okay, you guys don't think it's cool to talk? Well, how about this guy and all the talking that he does? Well, yeah, this Olympics has been chock full of moments that I've said are going to be winding up in college football team meetings in the middle of practice right now. Yep. And certainly for Mark Few, going back to his team, having been around all of these guys, because the stories about LeBron and about KD and about Anthony Edwards following them around right now, that's the real gem of what's coming out of this Olympic run. We all expected them to win, but now the ramifications of players that enjoyed playing together and maybe want to team up in the future, or ascending stars like Anthony Edwards, all of it can go back and help these guys be better on the back end here. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the rest of a very exciting day for the USA at the Olympics next year on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and it is time for our Liquid IV Olympic recap. Okay, if hydrating were an Olympic sport, you would win gold. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code GOJO at checkout. Okay, just got to point out USA leading in gold medals, 27 to China's 26. We got to hold on to that gold medal lead. But guys, Quincy Hall became the latest American to absolutely electrify Olympic track and field. Out of nowhere, comeback on Wednesday night in the 400 meters. It was incredible to watch. He's buried in fourth place, right? They round the last bend. He outruns the runner on his outside, 2 more on the inside, crosses the line at 43:40, the 4th fastest time ever. He drops to the track, starts doing snow angels. It's incredible. He beat Britain's Matthew Hudson Smith by 0.04 seconds. That's now the 5th fastest time in history. And after the race, we got an absolutely electric interview from Hall's brother, Milton.
Oh, man, this is awesome, man. This is 18 years in the making, dog. You don't understand. Miss Aisha and Quincy Hall been through it all to make it, man. Oh, man. I keep saying, oh, man. When he dropped that neck, he didn't get to work. He say get home, son, for a reason. He say it's that dog for a reason. You heard me barking in the background for a reason. And that's that dog, man. Oh, come on now. Put the cameras on somebody else, dog.
Confirmed he does indeed have that dog in him. Guys, that was incredible to watch. Track and field, like really giving us a lot of upsets for the Americans. We love to see it.
I was going to say the come from behind victory trend in track and field is really one that I can get behind. These races are already so exciting because they happen so quickly. But this one in particular is one of, if not the most compelling things I've seen so far in this Olympics, Dad, just because so much of high-level athletics and what I enjoy about the sport is you've got these space aliens making these extraordinary activities look really easy. Track and field's a perfect example. These guys go out here and make running fast look like it's second nature. They've trained so much at it. They're gliding so effortlessly. We've always joked we would love a regular guy out there so we can see just how insane what they're doing is. In this case here with Quincy Hall, you saw exactly how hard this was. You saw his bottom jaw pop out and him just abandon form and everything else and go max effort for the final leg of this race. It was like in Top Gun Maverick watching Tom Cruise trying to go Mach 10 where it's like, this thing probably shouldn't go this fast. And you're worried about something bad happening the entire time. But when he was able to make it work and get across that finish line, it was simply one of the most compelling images and videos of this entire games.
Was incredible on the heels of Cole Hawker in the 1500 coming from behind and winning that one. But this seemed more improbable because they were already out of the last turn, so the turn wasn't helping. He was, I think, in lane 7 anyway, and they were in the straightaway, and he was in 4th. And you're right, it's like that smooth running you normally see. Everything was gone. I mean, from everything seemed to be gone. It seemed like the piano was on his back. It seemed like, the look on his face was not relaxed at all, but it was just him digging for everything and passing person after person. It was amazing. It was, I agree, in a sport where they make it look easy, even when they're straining, even when it's a close finish, they still make it look easy. This looked like, oh my God, I'm putting everything I have, and you're seeing the determination, the I'm not going to lose this mentality, and everything else be damned, from form to anything, I'm going to cross that finish line first. That was just an amazing, amazing effort.
It was awesome to watch there, and you're right. In almost every sport, there's a point where you can only clench your fist and effort through so much, where technique and practice and everything. No. He just said, no, effort is going to win the day here. That's why I said every college football coach in America is getting ready to cue this thing up in team meetings today. This is what strain looks like, man. This is what wanting it looks like, man. And they're just going to replay this over and over. And quite honestly, Dad, it's going to work because it worked on me. I probably watched that video 12 12, 15 times yesterday and just couldn't get over it. So congratulations to Quincy Hall on an incredible performance. But Dad, one of many, and I know for you, and we've talked about a lot on the show, if anyone somehow doesn't know at this point, my dad's background as both a high school and collegiate wrestler. My Uncle Bob was also a high school and collegiate wrestler, both in addition to being football players. My dad's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame as a distinguished American. You can check it out if you're ever in Stillwater, Oklahoma. But Dad, big news on the Olympic wrestling front here for a couple of marquee performers that I know you're fired up about.
Yeah, a couple of the women had incredible performances. The other day it was Amit Alor, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing her name right. She was a two-time world champ from Northern California, American, who won gold at 20 years old, the youngest to win a wrestling gold medal at 20 years old. And again, she won her first world title at 18, so she is unbelievably dominant. And then just yesterday, Sarah Hildebrandt from right in the area here in South Bend.
High school,
a homegrowner, right? Yep, Penn High School. She's 30 years old, and she took a bronze at the Tokyo Olympics and won gold here. And it was interesting, you have to make weight in wrestling. And the person she was going to face in the finals to make weight didn't make weight, missed it by 1/5 of a pound. She actually resorted to cutting her hair to try and make weight. That's how close she was, and was 1/5 of a pound overweight. So Sarah Hildebrandt, once that girl was DQ'd for that, Sarah thought she won the gold, but then the person that got disqualified, the person they beat that was wrestling for third and fourth, got moved up to wrestle for the gold. So then she found out she had to wrestle in a match, and she wrestled, and she won that one as well. So she won gold. As I said, Amit Alor won gold. Alor was outscored her opponents in 4 matches, 31-2. But I have to say the thing that tugged at my heart the most was in Greco-Roman wrestling, upper body wrestling. A 41-year-old Cuban wrestler, Mijan Lopez, again, I hope I'm pronouncing his first name right, won a gold medal for his 5th consecutive Olympic. Nobody has ever won 5 Olympic gold medals in the same event, in any event in the Olympics, until this guy did at 41 years old. And there is a tradition when you retire from wrestling that you take your shoes off and you leave them in the middle of the mat. And that's exactly what he did. 5th Olympics, 5th gold, 41 years old, took his shoes off, put them down in the middle of the mat, and retired. I mean, what an incredible, gives me chills talking about, an incredible moment for an incredible wrestler. Really, really a cool moment in the world of wrestling, in the world of sports.
Yeah, it felt reverent. It felt like we were watching something that was like just bigger, that somehow bigger than in a moment already in the middle of the Olympics, where it was unprecedented competition, where you had this window into if you go into old churches and temples, the area where the worship happened by the leaders was always sort of separate from everybody else. In a weird way, that's what this felt like, watching this man genuflect in front of the boots that had helped lead him to 5 consecutive gold medals in the games. It was awesome to watch there, as all of this had been. So just an incredible moment there from Dad. I know you didn't do Greco, so by the way, that guy at 41 years old, brick bleep house, absolutely
put together.
Stacked.
Absolutely put together. And you're talking about athletes in their 20s, some maybe in their early 30s. This guy's 41, still looks the way he looks. And wrestles, again, Greco-Roman, different than the freestyle wrestling. I won't get into it. Bottom line is, it's a hella hard event, no doubt about it. But to do it 5 Olympics in a row and to win the gold medal is just, it's a first time ever. But then to retire was it was a very, very cool and moving, really a moving moment that I think any athlete, not just wrestlers, any athlete would certainly appreciate.
How crazy is this? He was 41 years old, just retired after winning his 5th straight Olympic gold medal. Coming up next, we're getting ready to talk to Dwight Freeney, who went into the Hall of Fame this week and is one of the all-time greats enshrined in Canton forever in the NFL, one of the premier pass rushers of my lifetime, and a guy with Connecticut roots, 44 years old. Dwight Freeney is 3 years older than this man, and we're going to get a chance to talk to him next about his experience in Canton, some of his best memories from his playing days, and ask him to give some 860 love back to Connecticut next year on GoJo and Golic. Number 2, GoJo and Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. Hoping to talk to Dwight Freeney, Hall of Famer, all-time great for the Indianapolis Colts and proud Bloomfield, Connecticut son. Here coming off his big weekend in Canton. Dad, he was one of the many enshrined. We're talking later on also to Brian Urlacher, who obviously has been wearing a jacket, saw 3 of the Bears enshrined in the Hall of Fame this weekend. And it is interesting. You and I both finally went back and watched Hard Knocks last night, the first episode of the season involving the Bears preseason with Caleb Williams, their star quarterback, that included this Hall of Fame game. And it is interesting. As much as people talk about Hard Knocks maybe having jumped the shark, obviously now you have the offseason version, the in-season version, and the preseason version that's been the original for so long. Dad, I don't know. This one still, the preseason always manages to hook me back in, maybe because it's the only time that I was actually on NFL rosters was during the preseason, so it's the time of year I actually know decently well, but getting to see the behind-the-scenes window into all the little moments that we just saw in that Hall of Fame game that got rained out was pretty damn cool.
Oh, I mean, you do. I mean, especially, you know who the starters are basically going to be. It's for the middle to back end of the roster that you see these preseason camps and preseason games for. And to watch that game, that Hall of Fame game, and see Austin Reed, a rookie undrafted quarterback, get in the game and throw a couple of passes, and they had cameras on his family, his parents, and his fiance, I believe, and to show when he completed a couple of passes, just how happy they were. And then the rain hit and the weather hit, and the game got postponed and then canceled in the third quarter when Austin Reed was supposed to basically play the whole second half. So it's moments like that where you get into the personal part of seeing a guy trying to make a team. You know, there's other quarterbacks, obviously Brett Rippon, who had a really good game, Tyson Bagent, who started the game because Caleb Williams didn't. So this Austin Reed kid is fighting for a spot on the roster and gets shortened because of the rain and the family there. It's wild to see. It does take you inside. I didn't know the connection of Nick Saban and Matt Eberflus. Nick Saban made an appearance on the show, and Matt Eberflus was his linebacker when Nick's first head coaching job at Toledo. Matt Eberflus was his linebacker, was a stoked big linebacker too. Yeah. And that was pretty wild. And given, comments about quarterbacks and high expectations for rookie quarterbacks and how to deal with it. But I did not know that Saban-Eberflus connection.
When in doubt, just assume that Nick Saban has somehow touched everyone of meaning and value in the world of big-time sports and coaching. I think that much we've seen is pretty true at this point based on his tenure. But let's go out right now and talk to someone who was the star of the show this past weekend at the Hall of Fame enshrinement, one of the new men putting on the gold jacket. Dwight Freeney, kind enough to join us now here. Dwight, good morning. Congratulations. How you doing?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well. So take us back to last weekend. Take us back to the moment where you finally, the culmination of all this hard work. How did it finally feel to stare out into that crowd with the gold jacket on, staring at your gilded face?
It's you know what? I mean, I hadn't stopped smiling since I heard about me going to be inducted, and I still hadn't stopped smiling ever since it's been over. They do such a good job at the Hall of Fame honoring you. And, I couldn't tell you how many text messages I've received for everyone who was, that came to the event. It's like planning a big wedding, honestly. And you have people coming to see you and giving you hugs, people you hadn't seen in 10, 15 years. Your high school, fellow defensive end that played, bookends with you in high school. It's crazy. But it's a memory that will last a lifetime for me and my family. And, like I said, I hadn't stopped smiling every time I think about it.
The moment where you unveil the bust, do you guys see it before that, or is that the first time that you see it?
Well, we see versions of it. All right? We don't see the finished product. So, you sit down in a chair and guy sits there and does his, sculpting, but it's really molding with his hands. So he's sitting there molding. You sit there for 10 hours, right? And you sit there and they try to get you right. And then you look at it and you're like, either this looks a lot like me or this looks nothing like me. And for me, it looks nothing like me. So I was like, oh God, what are we going to do here? So I guess they have a process of when, you keep showing pictures and you keep working with them. And we finally got to an absolute amazing version of it. And I think it looks exactly like me now.
Yeah, we just popped the picture of it up there, and you guys got to a great spot with that, which is awesome because it's going to be there forever amongst this other sea of legends that also come back around this weekend. And I think it's one of the coolest part is seeing you guys going into the Hall of Fame, interacting with the rest of this fraternity. I'm wondering, was there a player or two that you saw around that weekend that really stopped you in your tracks of someone that you had looked up to or idolized or been around for your career?
Yeah, it's really sensory overload, to be quite honest with you. And I can't tell you if there's one guy. It was just a bunch of guys. All of those guys are legends. So you're talking Ronnie Lott. I grew up watching, I was a Giants fan, but Ronnie Lott back in the day was a beast in the 80s and 90s. So for me, seeing Ronnie was great. Obviously Bruce Smith, legend, 200 sack club, the only guy, right? So, there's a lot of guys, Carl Eller, Mean Joe Green, which was a huge one for me as a D-line guy. So there's a lot of guys that you happen to see, and it really moves you when you see them. You're like, you can't get your jaw off the ground. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to be on these guys' team. I'm going to be on the same stage with these guys. That doesn't make any sense. It's an amazing feeling when you see those guys.
So you see those guys, some of the greats of all time, of which you're now part of that club. Everybody knows your stats going in that got you into the Hall of Fame. But for me, I like the stories of how you got there. And it just so happened that I would be working at ESPN in Connecticut when you were in high school at Bloomfield before you went to Syracuse. So going back to high school, relive some of that and what formed you to become the player that you became?
Well, I think at every level, you learn something and you get better, right? Get better. I think high school, work ethic that's where if I think about what it was in high school, it was just what it means to actually truly work hard. And, as a kid, you don't really know, whatever your dad and your mom tell you do some chores, you go ahead and do it. You don't really know what it is to push yourself to your limits and beyond. And I think in football and high school, Jack Cochran was my high school coach, and he pushed me to limits I didn't know existed. I thought I was going to die out there, but I'm still here today. It's gotten me better. It's gotten me better, and I think that's valuable things that you learn at a young age. And just knowing that you have another level that you can push yourself to.
When did you first lock in on the spin move? I think that's become so synonymous with you as a player. This one thing, my core memories of you when I was watching you with the Colts was just this unguardable spin move. So when did that get introduced to your repertoire and you figure out, hey, I might have something here?
That happened in high school, and I tell the story of the N1 mixtapes back in the day where it would be basketball guys trying to break the ankles of defensive players and try to make them look absolutely ridiculous. And I was a big fan of the N1 mixtapes back in the day, so I wanted to go on the practice field and see if I can replicate something that would make the offensive tackle look ridiculous. And that's how the spin move kind of started, became, the beginnings of it. And it just kept getting better as the years went on. It was easy back in the day, in Connecticut, we used to run the ball like 99% of the time. So the offensive tackle was already leaning over his really trying to come out and knock you out, so his head was already over his toes. So it was easy to spin on guys when they're trying to kill you. It became a little bit harder when they're leaning back just like this, trying to pass protect. But the fact that I've been doing it for so long since high school, and I just kind of developed it, kept doing it, it just became something natural for me.
So what we're saying, what I'm hearing is it's your fault that we've had now Myles Garrett evolve to the point where he's actually doing crossover dribbles in front of the center on the offensive line. I can blame you for that.
Maybe, but the truth is that is kind of where it developed, man. I used to come out and I used to act like I was doing a crossover move, just like how Myles is, and I would come out and act like I'm crossing over, and I'll act like I'm going this way, and I'll spin back the other way. That was kind of my thing, and now if you see anybody spinning or anything like that, I know somewhere on that lineage tree, somewhere, one of those roots or vines is going to come find me, and I know I left my mark in the game, and it's awesome.
Yeah, you certainly did, to the mark to putting on a gold jacket. And, the different enshrinees have different people come to the ceremony to help honor them. You had Michael Jordan at the ceremony. I mean, so talk about that friendship. And I'm sure it includes the golf course, I would imagine.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, it's kind of nuts. You grew up watching a guy and idolizing a guy, then it becomes your best friend later on in life. And it doesn't really make sense, to be quite honest with you. But I ended up getting to know the guy. It was actually through the game of golf. I got invited to his golf invitational in 2003, I think it was, in the Bahamas. And I ended up meeting him and one of his best friends at the time, who lived in Indianapolis. All right. So whenever those guys used to take trips, I got really close with his best friend. They would take the young guy along, which was me. All right. So then, all of a sudden we're taking trips, and I'm just the young guy, the rookie, whatever you want to call it, tagging along on the trip. And that's how our friendship started. And it's been great ever since.
Michael Jordan is known as a ruthless competitor. Like, even amongst a sea of great competitors in pro sports and at this level, he is known as the most ruthless. Do you remember the first time where you really butted up against, where all of a sudden you saw that version of him come out?
It's funny. I mean, we play golf all the time, and I see it all the time. It's actually hilarious. It's like you'll sit there and thank God he's on my team 99% of the time, so I don't have to deal with it on the other side. But it's like you see it in his eyes, right? It's like, the clock is ticking down, 5 seconds left on the clock, and he has the ball, and he goes to the lane, and he double clutches on Craig Elo type of look. It's the same thing on the golf course. We're on a golf course, hole 17 or 18. We need a big shot. We're playing team golf, so we need him to make something. All of a sudden, you'll see the craziest bounce onto the green, and he'll roll and hit the flagpole and just drop. It just feel like, man, I tell you, it's something else. It's crazy how, what happens on the basketball court can happen on the golf course with him.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing. Good thing you're on his team and not against him, because a billionaire that he is, especially when he wants to make some bets, is going to get pretty costly to somebody.
I'm on the right side. I'm on the right side.
Yeah. Obviously, an incredible honor going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but also you're going to get honored with your jersey being retired at Syracuse this year. So talk about that. I think you're the 7th player to have his jersey retired at Syracuse.
Yeah, I mean, and that was one thing that, I was not expecting, didn't even think about. And, Syracuse, they don't do that a lot. Okay. And they don't retire jerseys. And, for that place, for my jersey to be retired means the world, means everything to me. And, my number isn't retired at the Colts, so for me, it's, this is the first place really outside my high school is my jersey's been retired, and Syracuse is such a big place and so many legends have played there. So for me to be amongst those legends, words, I don't have enough words for it.
It's an incredible honor, richly deserved, and by the way, should happen with the Colts very soon too, for what it's worth. Did you get a chance to visit with Fran Brown at all since he's come over? I know a lot of people around Syracuse are really excited about the energy he's brought.
Yeah, I had a conversation with him on phone. I didn't really get a chance to see him. I hadn't been up there yet, but he is full of energy. He's full of energy, and I think he's the type of guy that this program needs. He's a guy that, he can bring that recruiting power and relate to those guys, and hopefully, I don't know, from a scheme standpoint, where he is, that will to be seen here soon. But I think just from an energy and getting the guys motivated and bringing the right type of guys in, I think, he's ahead of the game there.
So also, I was noticing your 47 forced fumbles, which is right near the top all time of forced fumbles. Is there an art to that? I mean, you see guys swipe down on the ball and force a fumble, but is there an art to tackling and forcing a fumble?
It's interesting. I was a big Lawrence Taylor fan, and I think, without thinking about it, I started developing and bringing that into my game, like the tomahawk chop from the top, coming down and trying to strip the ball every single time I try to make the tackle. Whether it be on a running back, whether it be on a quarterback, it didn't matter. And I was trying to be as greedy as possible. And I was trying to get everything. I wanted the ball. I wanted my offense to get the ball back. I wanted to recover the fumble. I wanted to score the touchdown, not only just get the sack. I think that is probably one of the most underrated stats there is. People don't realize the significance of forced fumbles. It's equivalent to an interception or maybe even greater just because of where you get the ball once you recover the ball. And it's usually behind the line of scrimmage a lot of times. And sometimes guys pick up the ball and score. So, imagine, a guy like Robert Mathis, who has the most forced fumbles in the league history. And I'm up there. So, I think that it needs to, the light should be shined on that a little bit more. And the significance and how important that stat is, and not just for me. I'm already in, but for my guy Robert, who needs to get in. He has the most in the history of the league.
I was going to say it's a hell of a bookend tandem that folks had to deal with for a long time in Indianapolis, and you're absolutely right. Deserves that love and recognition as well. You mentioned learning that growing up, loving watching Lawrence Taylor. I'm wondering now, however much you watch or keeping up with the game, who are some of your favorite pass rushers that you're currently watching in the NFL now?
Yeah, you know what? They're getting better, man. And there were some years where I'm like, I don't know. But now I'm like, man, you got Myles Garrett looking good. Max Crosby's looking good. TJ Watt's looking good. Micah Parsons. I see a little bit of me actually in a lot of the guys, it's like a combination of them. TJ Watt and Myles Garrett are kind of spinning how I used to spin. Micah had the motor that I had, playing the game. So, and Max Crosby's relentless. And he's another guy that, he pulls out a lot of moves, and it's similar to how I used to do it. And so it's kind of a mixed bag. And I love seeing the young guys get after it. I've never seen a pass rusher I don't like. I like them all, and, I think the future is bright.
There's no doubt, and it's thanks to folks like you that have continued to lay the groundwork and give guys something to aspire to here. Dwight, we can't thank you enough for the time and all the insight today. Congratulations again, as someone who grew up and played high school football in Connecticut. Great to see someone who hails from the Nutmeg State go and make it such a high place here. So congratulations, and thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. You guys take care.
Thanks, Dwight.
Yeah. It's so funny
right,
that
he
spin
mentions,
move. Oh my God, ridiculous.
Oh,
it's funny he mentioned Jack Cochran as his high school coach. Jack Cochran was coaching high school football when I was coming up in Connecticut. Actually beat us a couple of times in the state playoffs there. My high school football head coach, Mike Tyler, was on that staff with Dwight Freeney. And to the point we made about Mark Few, where you'd hear about these legends of the game all the time. And for Mark to be able to go back to Gonzaga and impart those stories, that was what we heard coming up in high school was down the road at Bloomfield. I went to Northwest Catholic, which is a little Catholic school right in the town line over from Bloomfield. We'd hear these stories about Dwight Freeney and what he was like coming up and that motivator there. And as he just described, he has been that for a lot of people over the years as this next generation of pass rushers has plucked from and tried to mimic this move that he has made one of the most famous and synonymous in sports.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr. Guys, the Chiefs just made Harrison Butker the highest paid kicker in NFL history. He got a 4-year contract extension worth $25.6 million, which includes $17.8 million guaranteed. But obviously, that still wasn't the biggest headline of this man's offseason, because this man did a thing. You know what I'm talking about. He gave a speech on May 11th at Benedictine College. He took months to prepare it, he said, which is shocking to me because the way it was received and the things he said, I thought he wrote it like 5 minutes before he went on stage. The comments were considered anti-gay and sexist, okay? So among other things, Butker criticized Pride Month. He said being a homemaker was like the most valuable thing a woman can do. They'd been told insidious lies about having careers and stuff, and what they really need to do is go home and have children. So yesterday, he had a press conference for his new contract, right? And you might think maybe he'll walk back those comments a little bit after all the backlash. He didn't.
You know, my whole career I've talked about how I'm a husband and I'm a father before it comes to me as a kicker. It's something I've always preached. But then when I use that to talk about women and I say that they should embrace and love being wives and being mothers over their career, I think then it gets construed that I'm trying to put women down, which I'm not at all. I love women, I love my wife, and it comes from a place of love.
I love women, I love my wife. I know human women. We get it. Look, I think he should be allowed to have his views. I understand they're rooted in religion, whatever. He's entitled to his opinions, right? I'm entitled to think that his opinions are wrong. 'Cause, you know, he's going up here and he's saying like these have been taken out of it's been construed a certain way, and it's like you can't really misconstrue when you say that like women should embrace being wives and mothers over having a career, because hear me out, this is crazy, you can do both. I know, did I just fix everything? Like, you can do both. I don't know why that's so shocking to Harrison Butker, but apparently it is.
Yeah, I know. And Dad, you and I had the chance to discuss this. Jesse wasn't with us then. And so the reaction right now is fresh, and it's the emotion that we felt at the time from a lot of women outside of that room and some inside that room who felt slighted by those comments given the circumstances here. I think the thing that I continue to come away from here, and I caveat this by saying, we've seen exactly that. I saw that about 1.5, 2-minute clip of Harrison Butker talking to the media there, standing 10 toes down on those comments. And whether he was not asked about it or chose not to address it, I don't think the dispute from anyone is this idea that being a father and a husband or a wife and a mother are incredibly valuable and meaningful vocations, that there can be a lot of meaning found in being a homemaker, whether you are a husband or a wife, or that putting your family first isn't something noble and that everybody believes should be the case. But what was also addressed in this speech was the idea that you were told diabolical lies, which he has never once expounded on what those diabolical lies are. It was taking shots at Pride Month and the LGBTQ plus community. It was also taking shots at, I know abortion is a controversial subject, and I'm sure in that room full of people heavily religious, there's probably not a lot of pro-choice in that room in terms of what he was talking about. So it's probably a willing audience for that. But IVF and a bunch of other means of alternative family planning that some people do not have a choice if they want to get to that position where they are fathers or mothers. All of these different groups that he found a way to in a speech where he said, I poured over, I put time into this, all of my words were purposeful. If that's the response that you're going to have, then I'm still going to take issue with those specific parts that he's never once actually answered for publicly, just goes and continues to latch onto the father and mother side of this.
Yeah. Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, when asked about the comments back in May, said the league has a diversity of opinions and thoughts, and left it at that. And that's exactly what it is. He has his opinions. We can wholeheartedly disagree with his opinions, but He's allowed to have his opinions, and as he said, he put a lot of thought into these words, and he truly believes them. And we can truly not believe or not agree with his thoughts on these. And that's the way the world goes round. You can have these disagreements. And I know I vehemently disagree with some of the things that he said. A lot of the things that he said, as Jesse, you do as well, and Mike, you do as well. But he's allowed to say them. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. I can just put it aside and say, I completely disagree with you and move on with my life. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It doesn't affect me in one sense at all.
I can understand that, Dad, but we're also white men sitting up here who aren't, and this is a guy who is someone in a position of power. Like, we give athletes an undue voice and an undue share of power in society, so I can understand why people who are in the groups that he pointed out are bummed out that a person with that kind of platform has given people who share those opinions and come from a much more hate-filled place ammo of an NFL player saying this publicly to fuel their arguments. I can understand why that's disappointing to people in those groups that already feel they're under attack at a lot of different junctures.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, Gojo. I also think right after this happened, people were like circulating a petition for the Chiefs to like kick him off the team.
Yeah.
And like, I mean,
that was never real.
Yeah.
Didn't be real, right?
So I hear what you're saying. Like, it's very disenfranchising for groups of people who have been attacked by his speech to hear this from a person, like you said, who has his platform. At the same time, I agree with what you're saying, Senior. It's like, okay, we think this guy is saying things that are stupid, and we can just move on from it while also perhaps condemning it, which is what I condemn it in the strongest of terms.
And it's like there are people that condemn it that we do. There are people that wholeheartedly agree with it. And then there are the fence sitters of which you are really trying to reach or talk to try and for those people to give those words power. That's what you wonder. Who's going to listen to that and have their mind changed, or if they were kind of on the fence, have their mind taken the way of Harrison's thoughts. I don't know. I don't know, but he was talking to a room full of probably a majority of people who agreed with those comments.
I just have to say, though, because I'm sorry, but this gets me every time. He's like, I poured over this speech. I put my heart and soul into it. Like, I just am imagining him with like the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like the board behind him with all the things like connecting. He worked so hard on this, and he thought it was a good idea to quote Taylor Swift in a speech about how women should not focus on their careers and should have a family and children. And at no point during this pouring over this speech did he go, maybe that's not a good person to draw a connection to here. Not once did that run through his mind.
Yeah, no, listen, one of those, you need people around you that care about you a lot more to not let you go and poke the hive that are the Swifties. So, leave her name out of that one if you're going to go down this path. I hate that we gave this so much more air. It's one of those things that it was so disagreeable at the time. It's going to get relitigated yesterday because he spoke about it, and I understand it. And the reality is we are thankfully going to move on. This is not something that's going to linger at a Chiefs locker room that quite honestly has even bigger problems in terms of some of the other things that have happened here, and is also a place where, and Dad, you know this in a locker room, like you're used to hearing guys like this have an opinion and sort of putting it off to the side because it's a big locker room. Yes. It doesn't affect what you've got in the day-to-day. You don't hang out with all these guys. It's, hey, like for most people in that locker room, they need Harrison to kick the football real good. And right now he's still kicking the football real good enough for him to give them that money. And so, it's disagreeable, but it is one of those things that while I have a visceral reaction to it, I know Jesse did and plenty of others, the bottom line is, having been in those situations before, it gets really easy inside there to compartmentalize this enough in the name of self-preservation, because most people in these locker rooms also don't have the luxury of being able to think about that stuff. They're thinking about how to keep their jobs and feed their families now, however it's constructed.
Absolutely right. As I said, everybody doesn't sit around, hold hands, and sing Kumbaya. Some people get along with others. Others don't get along with people. You just do your job. You go out and you do your job, and that's how it's looked upon. And that's the end of the story. So he's kicking the ball great. He got an extension. Great. Good for him. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything he says, which people don't.
Coming up next, we'll talk actual football, more Hall of Fame with another gold jacket and Brian Urlacher as we look ahead to the Bears 2024 season here on GoJo and Golic. Coming off a weekend where we celebrated a bunch of new Bears Hall of Famers, it's only right that we get to talk to one of the best Bears legend, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Brian Urlacher, kind enough to join us here now. Brian, good morning. How you doing, man?
Good morning. Doing well. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
I guess we did neglect your most important title at this point now. You know, you are a college football dad. You're an empty nester. Your son hanging out now in South Bend in familiar territory for us. So what was that like, man? Talk to me about dropping your son off in South Bend and now getting ready to watch him chase the dream in the fall.
Yeah, it was exciting. That was a great process. You know, he had a ton of good offers. We think we narrowed it down to some good, or not we, he. The whole process was his deal. He chose where he wanted to go. He picked the schools. We took 3 visits, TCU, University of Miami, and Notre Dame was his last one. And that was, I mean, once he got to meet Marcus in person and kind of hang out on campus and see what it was like there, it was a no-brainer. And you look at the education he's going to get when he goes there. He talked to some guys that went there, and I told him about how guys were that I played with in the league that went there and how they acted, what type of guys they were. And I think that was an easy decision for him. And we couldn't be more happy for him. And they're a great football program. On top of all that, they're a great football program.
Yeah, and being a father watching a kid play after having played, what a difference, isn't it? Of just your nerves because you can't control anything on the field of watching your kid play a sport.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Your nerves, like when I got played, I was never nervous. You know, I was always excited. The adrenaline was going, but I was never nervous. Man, watching him play, even the spring game, went to the spring game, and he got in. I was like, oh man, here we go. Come on. Don't mess up. You have zero control, and you're rooting for him so hard to do well that your nerves go crazy. It was stressful.
Yeah, no, I've always heard about that from Dad. So the good news is, though, like you said, he's in great hands. He's in a great situation, and we have no doubt. We hope he's enjoyed his time in South Bend. We're looking forward to him going and trying to do a lot of the things that you did yourself as a player. And now, on the complete other side of that, you're a guy that wears a gold jacket, proudly, a Bears alum here. What was it like watching 3 more guys with Bears ties get their names called and their names enshrined in Canton this past weekend?
It was awesome. It's so well deserved by all 3 of them. I wish Michael would have went in earlier. We kind of got screwed out of his speech because, he's a character. Back when he was healthy, before the ALS and everything, he was a character. He was fun to watch, fun to be around. Lit up a room when he walked in. So I wish we'd have got a chance to hear his speech. And I wish, because if we talk to guys on that team who talk about how good he was the guy that made that defensive line go. So they think he should have been in earlier. He's in now, so it doesn't matter. And then Pep and Hester. I mean, Hester is the greatest of all time in his position. I'm glad he got in. You never know how it's going to work out with kick returners or special teams, but he deserves to be in there. He got in. What a great speech by him. Called Lovey out, which I liked. Lovey got the standing O. And then Pep was a no-brainer. First ballot guy. There was no doubt in my mind.
Devin Hester, you were a teammate with his for a while. And to see him kind of break through that ceiling of a punt returner or a special team specialist, get in the Hall of Fame, do you kind of hope that starts the ball rolling? It's such an underrepresented group in the Hall.
Yeah, it really is. I think there's a punter, a kicker, one kicker, a Ray guy, and punter, Ray guy, kicker, Morton Anderson, and now Devin. You got to get a special team. I think, you look at Steve Tasker up from Buffalo, the guys, the cover guys. I think of Bill Bates because I grew up watching the Cowboys. Bill Bates was awesome on special teams, but these guys are such big parts. If you talk to players who played with those guys on their teams, they're such a huge part of the team, and their impact on games is huge. So hopefully in the future they can get some of those guys in there because they deserve to be in there. They may have a small part of the game, but they affected the game a bunch when they were in there.
That Hall of Fame weekend, we all get to watch on the outside and see the speeches, but for someone who's gone through this, to be around so many other guys from the Hall, what do you remember most about that weekend, whether it was the time with your family, seeing some of your idols and all the things that go into it?
The coolest thing for me was my party on Thursday night, to have everybody in my life from junior, like 8th grade football, 9th grade, high school, college, and the NFL all together in one room. It's kind of like my wife's wedding, I guess, because you have everyone together from your whole career, from your whole life, who's important to you. And they all came there. I think we had like 300 people at my party. It was unreal. I definitely stayed out way too late that night. I got the week kicked off with a bang, and I paid for it the rest of the weekend. But it's unbelievable. And every event is cooler than the next, if that makes sense. We have the gold jacket ceremony. Then you have your induction. And I'll say this, once my induction speech was over, it's just like a huge relief is lifted off of you. Because you prepare, because you don't want to look dumb while you're up there. And then you finally get done. You're like, okay, I made it. I'm in. Now I can sit back and kind of relax and watch the other speeches and enjoy myself instead of worrying about giving my speech all weekend, because I was nervous about it, man. It was over the time they allotted us. And so a bunch of guys went over, but I was really trying to be on my time because I didn't want to take time from other guys. So I went over by 2 minutes, but I felt like I needed to. And I still let people out that I wanted to get in my speech.
Hey, Caleb Williams, Matt Eberflus, and this team trying to take the Bears into more of those great days. So from what you've seen and heard so far of Caleb Williams now coming in, trying to be the man in Chicago, what have your impressions been of him?
So I'm kind of removed from the organization because I live here in Arizona and I don't really follow him as much, but I have been, I've had some good conversations with people about Caleb. I've heard some great things. Did an interview yesterday with someone who said he came in after practice one day, they started to bring the team up together. And, usually rookies don't break the team down. But he jumped in there and he didn't want to break the team down. He said, hey, guys, we need to start picking up after ourselves in the locker room. There's bottles everywhere. There's Gatorade cans. There's, pick up after yourself. It's not the custodian's job to pick up after you. So pick up after yourself. That to me right there is a big deal. I don't care if you're a rookie, played no snap, you shouldn't have to tell grown men to pick up after themselves. That should just be understood. The custodians have jobs. They don't want to be picking up your Gatorade bottles, your water. Some guys didn't like it. I personally thought it was awesome. I mean, they're grown men, but you shouldn't have to tell a grown man to pick up after themselves. And he stood up right there and did that. To me, it shows he respects those guys that work in the building. And Mike, you played for quite a bit, so you know that those guys mean a lot. You're around them every day. You see them. They work hard every day. So for him to say something like that, for me, I gain a little more respect for him. But talent-wise, he's unbelievable. His toughest game last year was versus the Irish. I watched that game, and he didn't play very well. Coach's defense was pretty good that game, but who knows? They got good running backs, they got good receivers, and their defense played great towards the end of the season. So we shall see.
Talk a little bit about playing against a rookie quarterback. There were 6 taken in the first round. Now all 6 aren't going to start, but just in your experience playing against a young quarterback, you saw last year C.J. Stroud played great. Bryce Young struggled in Carolina. So the differences between the two, but just overall playing against a rookie quarterback.
It's you probably the same for every game in the NFL, but is when you have a rookie quarterback in there, there's a lot of things they haven't seen. So not that you want to throw new stuff at them, but I think for us, it was just do our base stuff and do it well. That's what we always tried to do. We didn't really try and trick them because the game's so fast as it is. I mean, if you try and throw new stuff in there, you're probably going to trick yourself. So, I think it has a lot to do with what they have around them as well. If a team runs the ball really well with a rookie quarterback, you want to stop the run. And I think the Bears, they've ran the ball really well the last 3 years. I know Justin Fields helps with that because he ran the ball really well, but they've got good running backs and they've been able to run the ball pretty well. So if they can do that, I think they'll kind of help Caleb move along a little faster.
I am jealous of your golf game. I mean, we both played in the American Century Championship. You finished 25th and were disappointed. Yeah. I finished 6th from the bottom. I should be disappointed. You were disappointed at 25th?
Yeah, well, I go in there every year and I must think I'm better than I am. That's obviously how it is because I go in there. One year I finished 9th. One year I finished like 12th or 13th. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go top 10 this year for sure. That's my going in there. Those are my goals. And then midway through the first round, I'm like, well, all right, we need to make some new goals because top 10's out because I've already made 2 doubles. I've lost 4 balls. It's so frustrating because during and maybe you're the same way as me, but I'm like, okay, there's a double on an easy par 5 where everyone's going to make birdie or eagle, and I make a double bogey. It's just in my mind, the wheels are turning of what I didn't do. And the course is not hard, but I think the problem is for me, I'm going to make an excuse for myself, is when I'm at home, I don't walk, never. And then I get to Tahoe, we have to walk. So I don't think my body is not sure how to react when I'm walking on the golf course. That's what I'm going to go with.
I'm going to buy that right there. I still haven't found the excuse for Dad right now, and neither is he. So maybe at some point you guys can get together out there in Arizona and you can help try and bridge the gap here for one of your fellow defensive players trying to make it happen out there in Tahoe. But Brian, listen, we appreciate all your time and insight today. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your time. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon and see you around South Bend at some point.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys in South Bend. You guys take care. Appreciate it.
All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick ones to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday here from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, Xumo Play, all these fun places where you can catch us live. If you miss us there or any of our great guests and want to catch up on those, and thank you to Gonzaga head coach and U.S. men's basketball assistant coach Mark Few, who joined us from Paris in the lead up to the game against Serbia today. Hall of Famer Dwight Freeney, Colts legend, kind enough to give us some time, as well as Brian Urlacher, also Hall of Famer, also Bears legend, for the same deal. You can catch that wherever you get our podcast or available right here as soon as we get done on YouTube. Guys, let's get going with this. We talked a little bit about Hard Knocks during the show, but the Bears Hard Knocks first episode this week had one major star. Theo Bendit, rookie defensive tackle from Canada, got up. And the Rookie Talent Show, we've talked to plenty of players through the course of this preseason, and one of the things we always love asking about is the Rookie Talent Show. Theo Bendit was absolutely stealing this in episode 1 of Hard Knocks. Take a look at how he tried to ingratiate himself with the very American audience.
Where the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
There are levels to how great this clip is. For anyone that's just listening, Theo Bendit goes up there shirtless, which already should have been a signal. It's like when a team that works primarily out of shotgun all of a sudden comes out in 3 tight ends under center. Your antennas should be going off that something wicked this way comes. The man goes breakaway pants to an American flag bald eagle Speedo, where the eagle is appropriately placed right exactly where you think it would be, as he's singing God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood. My sneaky underrated favorite part of this is that when you look in the audience to see who is singing along in this, it is a very, very Caucasian bunch of faces staring back at you that seem to actually know the words.
Yeah, yeah, they did know that. But that's also when you know you've won at a Rookie Talent Show, is when they start singing with you. So that's when you know you've done, because Caleb Williams
of the room
earlier in the broadcast, Caleb Williams was horrible. I mean, after he announced his $25.5 million signing bonus to Oohs and Ahs, he sang like a couple of words and got booed off the stage. At least this guy had people singing along with him, even though it was a horrific rendition. But hey, kudos to the way he did it and the flair he had.
That's what you got to do. You got to go all in on these performances. That's the only way to survive the Rookie Talent Show, is to go up there and full send it. You don't have to be a good singer. And this is the rule in karaoke. I've heard Mina Hassan talk about being in a karaoke league where you are not graded on your ability to actually sing. Because if you could actually sing, someone would be paying you to do it. It's about the vibe you bring and the strength of your performance. And unfortunately for Theo Bendit, who ended up getting injured, a hamstring injury in the game on the field goal unit or on the extra point unit there, that unfortunately looks like it's going to end his training camp, he did at least get to cement his legacy as the guy who went full send on the Rookie Talent Show. So congratulations to Theo. It was an incredible look. Hopefully somewhere Will Ferrell is smiling thinking of that SNL sketch where he dons a very similar outfit. Jesse, why don't we get away from this and go to that, which is basically just right around the corner from what we talked about.
Yeah, so this is a sentence I didn't see myself reading. Our producer has this slotted in as Badger Gold Bond Fart. So we have a video here. It's pretty self-explanatory, but GoJo, can you take us inside what's going on? It's like the LeBron thing, but coming out of someone's butt.
Yes, that's probably the most appropriate way I've ever heard this dubbed, the LeBron James powder throw, but the rectal version. The Wisconsin Badgers assistant offensive line coach posted a video from training camp of one of their guys in warm-ups getting ready to go out, and all of a sudden you see this cloud of smoke pop straight out of his ass. And Dad, this is a good reminder that where we are in training camp, college is a little behind the pros, so I think these guys, most of them, are about a week in. This is when chafing starts to become questionable because you're in full full pads, everything's wet every day. You've already got these thick thighs that do save lives that are rubbing together a little more than you'd like them to. And so to stop them from meeting in the middle so much, I remember every day going out to practice. The one staple was guys scrounging around. You're like animals in the locker room looking for somebody who's got the full extra strength, extra size gallon jug of Gold Bond medicated powder. And you're just absolutely hammer timing that into the front and the back of your pants, getting ready to go out there. So I'm not surprised we got this great visual, because this is preparation meeting opportunity. You've got to be ready for those moments like this.
Oh, you have to load it up too. You have to absolutely load it up, because that's something that you can't really talk about that affects your play if you do end up chafing, and it just stays with you and it affects you, and it's a horrible feeling, but you can't use it, be on the injury report for chafing. So you got to take care of that. And usually it is with O linemen the most. The wildest thing I saw, we were playing in LSU when I was at Notre Dame my senior year, and our center, it was so hot there that our center actually changed his pants on the sidelines. They put up towels to kind of hide it, because his pants were soaking wet. And when this quarterback was taking the snap, water or his sweat would spray everywhere and get the ball in the quarterback's hands wet, because his pants were so soaked. So he ended up having to change them on the sideline.
And changing your pants once you've had knee braces on is one of the most difficult things on earth. Like, in addition to the Gold Bond, young players out there, especially young linemen, if you don't already know this and you're wearing knee braces, you got to find a way to poop before you go out to practice and training camp. Because if you've got to go once the pants have gotten the knee braces on and you've gotten a little damp, you started to get a little sweat going, trying to go to the bathroom and negotiate and navigate through that is a hellscape I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies.
Jesse, I have to imagine you have a comment on all this.
No, I actually have no comment on all this. I'm not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. This is disgusting. You guys are gross. Yep. Nasty.
Let's get to the third then and talk about something a little bit more wholesome and something we can all relate to, one of the favorite and most famous bar games of all time.
Yeah, okay. So Jackson Holliday looking much improved, right, in his second stint in the majors, second go-around, and perhaps this is due to the arcade game, Golden Tee. He started playing it in AAA when he got called up over the weekend. The Indians Visitor Clubhouse had it. Okay, so he said, honestly, once I started playing in Norfolk, I started hitting good again. I made a hole-in-one on a par 5 today, so I think that was a guaranteed 2 hits. He went 6-13 with a home run in that series in Cleveland. He's gone 3 straight games with a home run. Golden Tee trying to capitalize on this. They offered to send one to the Orioles clubhouse. So,
see.
Yeah,
that's
come on.
The fact that the clubhouse had Golden Tee in it, because I was wondering, Dad, if Golden Tee was still as popular in 2024 right now. According to the great Sarah Langs, Jackson Holliday is one of the youngest players to homer in 3 straight games. The only player as young or younger than him with a longer home run streak was Ronald Acuna Jr. back in 2018. So the proof is in the pudding in terms of the Golden Tee. I'm just happy to see that we haven't lost this recipe and people still rock with this game.
Well, and there is no sport more superstitious than baseball, because of the long season and anything to even bust out of a slump that you're going to use. And in this case, it's a video game, Golden Tee. So he's going to keep playing it. I wonder if the Orioles clubhouse will take it, because it's another thing. It'd be a bit of a distraction in the clubhouse as well, with people lining up to play Golden Tee. Give me a good old-fashioned pinball game any day of the week, but Golden Tee is one of the most popular bar games of all time, no doubt about it.
We talked about this with Quincy Hall earlier in the show. When you get to go max effort on that thing, there is no better feeling. And shout out to the Golden Tee at the front of CJ's Pub in South Bend, Indiana. When you get a couple of pops in you, and all of a sudden you're going over there and putting your entire body into that swing. When he said hole-in-one on a par 5, Dad, I wasn't surprised, because that's the kind of energy you got to bring to that game. It is max effort, nonstop, 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, hole-in-one on a par 5 is incredibly realistic.
For Happy Gilmore, absolutely. Shout out to Jackson Holiday, man. Way to keep hope alive with Golden Tee. I hope they accept that there, because then eventually we're going to get the hilarious baseball headline of someone on IR with an injury because of a wrist action in Golden Tee. You can book that one as soon as that thing winds up in the clubhouse here. Hopefully you bookmark this podcast show or a tweet, download, subscribe, rate, review it, leave us a 5-star rating. We love you. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.